Hi Year 10s, let's look at the immune system. This is the second lesson in our trilogy of the immune system, the second line of defence. Today your learning intention is to examine the innate immune response, which is the second line of defence against infection. By the end of the lesson, you should be able to describe the role of the cells of the innate immune response. And there's your vocabulary. Okay, warm up. There's 3 questions. I want you to grab your workbooks and work your way through these 3 questions. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, remember we know that whenever there is an infection in the body or the body is damaged in any way, the immune response has 3 stages. So there's 3 lines of defense against any sort of pathogens that enter your body. Remember, the first line of defense involves those chemical and physical barriers that prevent the pathogens, first of all, just from entering your body or entering any of your cells. The second line of defense, which is the topic of today's lesson, involves immune cells that attack pathogens without any specificity. So they just attack any kind of pathogens or foreign cells that enter your body. And that's called the innate immune system. So innate, remember, in means within yourself or inside, and nate means from birth or born. So it's the immunity that you are born with that is inside you. The third line of defense involves the creation of antibodies, which are specific to a specific pathogen or specific germ that is invaded your body, and that's called adaptive immunity. So the third line of defense will be the topic of our next lesson. All right, just a recap on the first line of defense. You should remember from last lesson we looked at chemical and physical lines of defense. So a physical barrier or a chemical barrier can actually stop the germs from entering your body or entering your cells. If there is a way for those pathogens to enter your body, it's most likely going to be through any of your several orifices around your body, including your eyes, ears, mouth, nose, and through your reproductive tracts and your urinary tract or digestive. Okay, let's look at the second line of defense. So what happens when a germ does actually breach your body? What happens when the germ does get in? What happens when a pathogen gets into your body? What happens? The pathogen then triggers your immune system. Okay, these are the organs of your immune system, and they have specialized cells that protect us from pathogens. So the key immune system organs that produce immune cells, number one, the most important one, is your bone marrow. And the bone marrow is an organ, it's a tissue that is found within your femur, is inside of your leg, your thigh bone. Then you have your tonsils, your thymus, spleen, appendix, and lymph nodes. So the bone marrow is used to produce all of your blood cells. So the bone marrow is the birthplace of all your red blood cells and all of your white blood cells, which are used for immunity. The appendix, tonsils, thymus, spleen, and lymph nodes are places around your body which are secondary organs of your immune system, and that's where your immune cells go to mature or to do their specific work. Okay, this is where our immune organs are found. I want you to notice that your bone marrow is your thigh bone. Inside of your thigh bone is that tissue called bone marrow. And your thymus, I want you to make sure that you look at the place where your thymus is. It's just behind your sternum next to your heart, or behind your breastbone next to your heart. Okay, recognizing self. So how do we know, how does the immune system know, or the cells of the immune system know how to differentiate between a foreign pathogen and a cell that's actually part of you. So how does it able to recognize what we call as a self cell? So if a pathogen does breach our first line of defense, then it will rapidly infect healthy cells to reproduce. It will proliferate and infect other healthy cells, and so on and so forth. So it's up to our second line of defense to recognize the infection and to neutralize it. So how do our white blood cells recognize foreign cells and not kill your own body cells? They actually learn, it's kind of like going to school, they learn to recognize self cells in the bone marrow. So before they are released from the bone marrow, they go through some sort of education and they learn how to recognize the proteins on the outside of a cell membrane. And all of the, basically all of the proteins on every single cell in your body are unique to you. And so those marker proteins on the outside of the cell membrane are also unique to you, and they're called either self-markers or they're called antigens. Okay, and remember, all proteins come from DNA. And of course, your DNA is unique to your brother's DNA or your sister's DNA, your parents' DNA. Unless, of course, you are an identical triplet or twin, you're going to have different protein markers to any other person in the world. So all cells in your body have protein markers on their surface, also known as antigens, and they're unique to you. When a white blood cell comes into contact with the protein marker or the antigen, it recognizes it as a self cell and will not destroy the cell. However, if there's an antigen that the white blood cell comes across and it doesn't recognize it, then it's termed as a non-self cell or an invasive cell or foreign cell, and that cell is destroyed. Okay, so there are two major types of white blood cells that help to carry out the immune response, and they roam freely throughout the body to seek and destroy pathogens. So the ones that we're going to focus on today are involved in the second line of defense, and they're called phagocytes. The other ones are called lymphocytes, and we'll talk about them next lesson. Phagocytes. Okay, so there are there's more than two, but there's two major types that we're going to talk about today. There are two major types of phagocytic white blood cells involved in the second line of defense. The first ones are neutrophils. And neutrophils make up they're the most abundant white blood cell in your body. They make up roughly between 40 and 60% of all white blood cells, and they roam freely throughout your body at any time in your circulatory system, and they are small enough to roam through the fluids, the interstitial fluid between cells of your tissues. So they're constantly in motion around your body, just searching for any foreign pathogens or foreign cells. They are non-specific. Remember, we're talking about non-specific immune responses today. They are non-specific, so they'll destroy anything that they recognize as not being a self cell. What they do is they engulf and they destroy bacteria, funguses, and viruses, and they also release a chemical signal called a cytokine, which increases inflammation around the area. Now, if you have ever had a cut or a mosquito bite, you'll know that inflammation occurs really rapidly. It's that hot, red sort of stinging pain that surrounds a mosquito bite or around a cut. So we'll talk about inflammation a little bit later, but that release cytokines, those chemical signals are called cytokines, and they increase that inflammation around the area. Now, those cytokines are also communication signals to nearby cells, and they will be an attractant to all other neutrophils around the area to come and help clean up either the injury or the infection. So onto macrophages. Macrophages are much bigger. So macro obviously means big, and phage means a cell that eats other cells. Phage is to eat. So macrophages are larger, they're much more long-lived than a neutrophil, and they are less abundant in a tissue. They make up about 2 to 8% of all the white blood cells, but they do a really good job of destroying any non-self cells. So they actually will consume a lot more bacteria, fungus, and viruses before they are full, and they'll be able to engulf and destroy those really quickly. So they're also non-specific. They will only recognize between either self cells or non-self cells, and they will destroy obviously the non-self cell. They too release cytokines to activate the body's adaptive immune response. So macrophages have two jobs. They have the job, just like the neutrophils, to engulf and destroy any bacteria, funguses, or viruses. They also engulf and destroy any infected cells, infected self cells that have already been infected by bacteria, fungus, or virus. But they also have a second job. Their second job is linked to the third line of defense, the adaptive immune response. And we'll talk about that in a moment. Okay, neutrophils. So here's a picture of a neutrophil. It has a multi-lobed nucleus between 3 and 5 lobes. It also it's packed full of these organelles called lysosomes. And remember, lysosomes are filled with proteolytic enzymes, which break down cell membranes and the contents of any sort of pathogenic cell. So neutrophils are a type of white blood cell. They roam abundantly throughout the circulatory system. When cells are damaged or infected, they release a chemical signal, a molecule called cytokine, into the surrounding area. The neutrophils detect the cytokines as a call for help and immediately rush to the damaged or infected site, ingesting and digesting any foreign pathogens like bacteria or fungus using their plentiful lysosomes. So they basically engulf, and then once that pathogen is inside of their cytoplasm, those lysosomes are exposed to the pathogen and then break that down. They have a short lifespan in your body, and once they're finished their job, they quickly die off, and then they are consumed by those bigger, larger macrophages. Okay, macrophages. Macrophages cells are the other type of white blood cell to arrive on the scene of the infection or injury. Like neutrophils, they detect non-self antigens on the cell membranes of foreign pathogens, like bacteria, and then engulf and destroy them. So if you look at the picture in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the bacterium in red, and then the macrophage has these specific receptors which try and locate a non-self cell. So it's now located the bacterium as being non-self, and it's starting to engulf that bacterium, and slowly will close that cell membrane around the bacterium, and the whole process is called phagocytosis. So phagocytosis, as in to eat, phago means to eat, and cytosis means to destroy or to cut. And so therefore it's going to engulf and destroy that bacterium. And you can see it actually releases all of the sort of digested proteins out into the interstitial fluid again in a process called exocytosis. So macrophages are much bigger and longer lived and can destroy many more bacteria. Once digested, the macrophage displays part of the bacterial antigen on its own cell membrane. So that's the difference between macrophages and neutrophils, is that the macrophage will actually, once it digests the foreign bacterium or fungi or virus, it will actually take some of its own protein, the bacteria's protein, and display it on its cell membrane as though it was an antigen. Okay, other cells, these other cells called helper T cells, they recognize this foreign antigen, and between the helper T cell and the macrophage, they together initiate the third line of defense. So that third line of defense we'll talk about more tomorrow in the next lesson, and that's just a sequence of events that leads to the complete eradication of foreign bacteria, but that's a much more specific role. Okay. So vasodilation, we know what dilation means, to expand. Whoops. Okay, so vasodilation. Here's an example where we have some skin. Obviously the blue stuff there is the air. Here's our skin cells, and we've got, unfortunately, an accident has happened where we stuck ourselves with a pin or a nail. And it's come right through our skin layers, and it's introduced some bacteria, some green bacteria there. So the first thing that happens here when we have an accident like this and some infecting pathogens, then the injured cells that are around that nail or pin will actually start to release their own chemical signals, and those chemical signals will be histamines. So those histamines, what they will do is they'll travel through to the nearest capillary, and these blue chemical alarm signals, the histamines, and they will act on the capillary itself. So what they do is they cause the capillary to dilate, and that's called vasodilation. Vaso, of course, is reminiscent of the word vascular. Vascular tissue is related to blood vessels. So the vessel there is the capillary, and vasodilation means that the space between these cells starts to enlarge. And of course, we know that there's liquid between cells, so that all that liquid interstitial fluid starts to leak out into this area here. And as the histamines cause those blood vessels to widen, the cytokines act as a beacon to also send signals to macrophages and to neutrophils to come to this area to mop up the bacteria and to eliminate that infection. So you can see here in the second picture that those phagocytes, the neutrophils, here's one of our neutrophils here with 3-lobed nucleus, and our phagocyte, our macrophages are coming towards the bacteria to engulf and destroy. Okay, and the last thing here, of course, is that the macrophages now have cleaned up and they are digesting those pathogens, those bacterial cells, and the tissue begins to heal in another process. All right, now we talked about inflammation before. Just talk about how the phagocyte attack creates a set of symptoms in that area. So those symptoms we're usually pretty familiar with is usually if you ever had some injured tissue like a broken bone or even just a snapped ligament, you'll know that immediately you get swelling in the area. So swelling in that area, or we can start with pain. Swelling and chemical activity around the nerve endings cause pain. So that swelling that starts to occur as soon as you, rip a muscle or tear a ligament or even get a mosquito bite, that swelling around that area starts to press on nerve endings, and that relates to the brain as a pain reception of pain. All right, the next thing is heat. So increased heat. If we have an infection, it's a great response from your body to try to increase your body temperature in order to kill the pathogen. So bacteria, they obviously like to proliferate between temperatures between sort of 5 degrees, positive 5 degrees Celsius, and about 45 degrees Celsius. Anything above that, maybe even less than that, maybe 42 degrees Celsius. Anything above 42 degrees Celsius, they start to die off, and that's why our body starts to heat up when we have an infection. So it's trying to kill off the pathogen as well as helping to, as well as helping to keep our body safe. The redness is a result of that vasodilation of the blood vessels, capillaries near the surface of the skin, and that results in the redness of that area. Swelling, of course, the vasodilation of blood vessels increases in the swelling of the area, and due to all of these things, pain, heat, redness, and swelling, we often get a loss of functional mobility of that area of your body until it has healed completely. Okay, just a little vocabulary here is all of the cells of your and proteins, the cytokines of your second line of defense, your neutrophils, macrophages. These are mast cells, which also help to induce inflammation by releasing histamines, and then those helper T cells. All right, guys, I want you to make sure that you have answered the questions that are in this PowerPoint, and then make sure that you're opening your textbook to complete the other questions assigned as well. Thanks.